A essência da União Europeia passa pelas oportunidades que oferece, pelos apoios que o fazem chegar mais longe, independentemente da sua idade, da sua profissão ou do local onde vive, para o ajudar em novos desafios e a melhorar o seu dia-a-dia, para apoiar os projetos em que acredita, aceder a financiamento e a contactos para estimular o crescimento e criar mais emprego, infraestruturas e transportes modernizados na sua cidade ou vila, escolhas ecológicas que lhe permitem obter energia mais limpa, ensino e formação para desenvolver competências e garantir que todos possam chegar mais longe, investigação, inovação e mais tecnologia para assegurar melhores cuidados de saúde. A União Europeia está a investir no seu futuro, em Portugal e em todos os países da União Europeia. Os beneficiários destes investimentos podem já partilhar as suas histórias, mas a sua oportunidade começa aqui. A essência da União Europeia passa pelas oportunidades que oferece, pelos apoios que o fazem chegar mais longe, independentemente da sua idade, da sua profissão ou do local onde vive, para o ajudar em novos desafios e a melhorar o seu dia-a-dia, para apoiar os projetos em que acredita, aceder a financiamento e a contactos para estimular o crescimento e criar mais emprego, infraestruturas e transportes modernizados na sua cidade ou vila, escolhas ecológicas que lhe permitem obter energia mais limpa, ensino e formação para desenvolver competências e garantir que todos possam chegar mais longe, investigação, inovação e mais tecnologia para assegurar melhores cuidados de saúde. A União Europeia está a investir no seu futuro, em Portugal e em todos os países da União Europeia. Os beneficiários destes investimentos podem já partilhar as suas histórias, mas a sua oportunidade começa aqui. A essência da União Europeia passa pelas oportunidades que oferece, pelos apoios que o fazem chegar mais longe, independentemente da sua idade, da sua profissão ou do local onde vive. o seu dia a dia para apoiar os projetos em que acredita. Aceder a financiamento e a contactos para estimular o crescimento e criar mais emprego. Infraestruturas e transportes modernizados na sua cidade ou vila. Escolhas ecológicas que lhe permitem obter energia mais limpa. Ensino e formação para desenvolver competências e garantir que todos possam chegar mais longe. Investigação, inovação e mais tecnologia para assegurar melhores cuidados de saúde. A União Europeia está a investir no seu futuro, em Portugal e em todos os países da União Europeia. Os beneficiários destes investimentos podem já partilhar as suas histórias, mas a sua oportunidade começa aqui.
Me to do for you.
"25 years ago, it was hard to believe that we'll be on this stage together.
I'm here to listen to you very carefully, and I would like to hear about your opinion, how we have to develop the European Union. I'm ready to take your questions.
How can we make Europe more transparent?
We need more content, we need to talk, we need to listen. We need to listen to your concerns and change the system on the basis of your concern.
Europeia passa pelas oportunidades que oferece, pelos apoios que o fazem chegar mais longe, independentemente da sua idade, da sua profissão ou do local onde vive, para o ajudar em novos desafios e a melhorar o seu dia a dia, para apoiar os projetos em que acredita, aceder a financiamento e a contactos para estimular o crescimento e criar mais emprego, infraestruturas e transportes modernizados na sua cidade ou vila, escolhas ecológicas que lhe permitem obter energia mais limpa, ensino e formação para desenvolver competências e garantir que todos possam chegar mais longe, investigação, inovação e mais tecnologia para assegurar melhores cuidados de saúde. A União Europeia está a investir no seu futuro, em Portugal e em todos os países da União Europeia. Os beneficiários destes investimentos podem já partilhar as suas histórias, mas a sua oportunidade começa aqui.
future of Europe and what you are expecting me to do for you.
"25 years ago, it was hard to believe that we'll be on this stage together.
I'm here to listen to you very carefully, and I would like to hear about your opinion, how we have to develop the European Union. I'm ready to take your questions.
How can we make Europe more transparent?
We need more content, we need to talk, we need to listen. We need to listen to your concerns and change the system on the basis of your concern.
Bon dia, good morning to everybody. It's my pleasure to moderate this citizens' dialogue today. As you have already seen, we have a high flyer panel. Well, Bertrand Piccard is literally a high flyer all over the world, as you know. And our countryman, Commissioner Carlos Moedas, although he sits on a very heavy pot of cash to finance innovation throughout Europe, he has really a bird's eye perspective on everything on innovation and research in Europe. And Vice President Maroš Šefčovič, being the Vice President of the Commission, he is by definition a high flyer, and relentless, unstoppable high flyer. So we are very honored to have the three of you with us today. And we are here to talk mainly, as you know, about energy and energy union. And energy, as you know, is one of the priorities of the Juncker Commission since the very beginning, since 2014. And no doubt the Vice President and Commissioner Moedas will tell you what the Commission has already done to promote this priority for European citizens, for Europe, for the world, the priority of a sustainable energy system. The measures proposed by the European Commission last November, include not only legislative proposals, but also other measures aimed at facilitating the transition towards a low-carbon economy, and in particular, a low-carbon energy system. And of course, there are financial tools, ways to get money to finance projects to lead us, to take us to the low-carbon energy system. But there are other ways without involving public money to facilitate this transition and to multiply the private capital invested in these sectors, to leverage the private capital invested in these sectors. One example is innovative contracts for energy efficiency in public buildings. You know, there are still some problems with the way these energy performing contracts are taken into account in the public accounts, which somehow prevent our municipalities throughout Europe to enter into these very beneficial contracts that enable them to reduce their energy bill, the schools, the hospitals, all the public buildings. And they cannot do that in many countries, like in our country, because the level of public debt is so high that it would not be accepted to increase further that public debt. Well, if we look at this kind of contracts in the proper way, and if we change the accounting rules, this can be done, and this will be done. And that's one of the measures, of the non-legislative measures that the Commission undertook last year. And with Eurostat, this problem is under solution, is being solved, and we hope all that Portugal will actively contribute to a quick solution of this problem. So, speeding up the transition towards a low-carbon economy means creating new jobs through new investment, on new technologies, on new innovative business schemes, through different ways of participation. Participation of energy consumers, participation of citizens in reshaping our energy landscape. To do that, we need several kinds of people. We need the visionaries, those who invent new futures. We need the researchers who lead us into these new futures. We need the entrepreneurs who turn the challenges into opportunities. And we need, above all, engaged citizens who share, support, direct, guide this transition. Not only as an energy transition, but also as a social and a political transition towards a more robust, a more efficient, a more responsive European Union. That's why we are here today. And we have some questions. You will be then invited to answer, and Sophia will tell you how this works, how is the mechanics of the participation in this session. I just wanted to give here a last word about our topic and about Portugal in the energy transition and Portugal in the energy sector. Because contrary to the perception of many people in Portugal and abroad, Portugal has been a pioneer country in the energy sector for many, many years. The first independent power producer, the first project finance project of a power plant in continental Europe was done in Portugal back in 1991, 1992, well ahead of all the other continental European countries. And again, in 2001, Portugal was the first country to develop a comprehensive policy bringing together renewables and energy efficiency under the same umbrella as the Commission has done last year in the Chapeau communication of the Clean Energy for All package. So Portugal is not just following what happens somewhere else. Portugal has been very often leading this process and has been among the winners of being a first mover. And it's important, I think, when we debate this question, this topic here in Portugal, to keep in mind that we have benefited a lot from the European framework, but we have also contributed to shaping in an active way this European framework. So now, Sophia, please tell us how we shall behave.
We want to have a more interactive debate, so for that we will use Slido. Everyone can find on your chair a small flyer where we have 3 steps to enter Slido. Slido is an application that will allow us to have polls. As George already told us, we will have 4 questions for you prepared today. But apart from that, we can also have questions from the audience being streamed on Slido. Also, tweeters using the official hashtag EU Dialogues will be picked. We will try to find the perfect balance between online questions and also questions from the audience. We invite everyone at home following this web stream also to join us. So you just need to go to Slido, www.slide.do, and enter with the event hashtag. The event code is the official hashtag EU Dialogues. On Slido, you don't need to write down the hashtag as it's already there. you just need to type EU Dialogues and you will join the event. Don't worry if you can find any polls already starting, because we haven't started, but we will count on you to make this the most interactive and lively debate possible.
Thank you, Sophia. So you can ask your questions through this platform, and we will see the questions here, or you may just raise your hand, and then I will give you the floor so that you can ask your question. In that case, please be brief, ask a question, don't make a long speech. And now let's go to the first question.
Yes, indeed. So I will ask the Régie to go to the Slido.
Everybody connected?
Yes. So,
Sofia, qual é o código?
the code is EU Dialogues as the hashtag. You can see here on the left corner, join Slido with EU Dialogues. So you just need to go to the application on your cell phone browser and enter with EU Dialogues. You will be redirected straight to this question. Also, an information regarding the translation channels. You just need to turn on your translation device, channel 1 for English and channel 2 for Portuguese. Até ao momento já tivemos 34 participações.
34 replies. I think the trend is clear. 80%, more than 80% believes that the planet is in danger. So the next question is...
We'll go straight to the next one.
Do you believe we have solutions to save the planet? Well, again, 80% believes we have solutions. I'm sure that one of the persons who voted yes is Bertrand. Bertrand, do you want to tell us why we have solutions and how you are implementing already these solutions? Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. When I wanted to fly around the world in a solar-powered airplane, the experts told me it was impossible. And nevertheless, we could do it. What does it mean? It means that the impossible is not in the reality. The impossible is in the head of the people who are prisoners of old ways of thinking. And this is why we need pioneering spirit. Pioneering and exploration, it's not necessarily something spectacular. Pioneering and exploration is a way of thinking. It's the way of embracing changes, embracing the unknown, and understanding that doubts and question marks are fantastic stimulations for creativity and performance. So if we don't have the pioneering spirit, if we continue to think like in the past, what's going to happen? We're going to have a protection of the environment that is going to be very expensive, very boring, asking people to do sacrifice. We will have unemployment. We will have no growth. We will have social disorders. And people will lose faith in the political system. If we have pioneering spirit, we understand that we have solutions. And that these solutions are going to bring growth. They're going to bring employment. And it's going to be a win-win between the environment, the economy, and the political world. And I deeply believe that the link between all the solutions is energy. With energy, you have a complete panorama of solutions that will at the same time protect the environment, because we have clean energy solutions, but we also have energy efficient solutions. A way to reduce the waste of energy. Because if you look the reality of today, half of the CO2 emissions that are disturbing the climate, half of the particles that people are breathing, creating billions of euros of damage in social health, all this is due to the inefficiency of the systems we use. We're still using systems that date from 100 years. Combustion engines, badly insulated houses, incandescent light bulbs, old heating and cooling systems, old industrial process. This is the main problem. So imagine that you would replace all these old, inefficient and polluting systems with new, clean solutions. It's a new industrial market. It is not only something that is good for the environment. It is something that is good for the industry. It's something that is good for the political world. It's something that is good for the consumers. You create, with electric mobility, with interconnections, with smart grid, with heat pumps, with LED lamps, with programs to insulate houses, you produce wealth. You produce employment. And with renewable energies, you produce social peace. Because you don't need to fight for energy anymore, like a lot of countries are still doing today. You bring the possibility to local communities to create their own energy. If you see a country like Portugal with 75% of energy imported from the outside, can you imagine the billions of euros of profits made by others than by local communities? So it's clear that we need this pioneering spirit to bring in all the solutions that exist. And these solutions, usually people don't know about them. This is the role of the European community, the European Commission. This is the role of the politicians. And it's also a role that the Solar Impulse Foundation has taken today with a goal of identifying and collecting, by the end of next year, 1,000 solutions to protect the environment in a profitable way. A complete change of paradigm. And yesterday, we had a dinner with several innovators, startups from Portugal, and I'm sure we will speak about them also a little bit later in more details. But it's fantastic to see the creativity of people. But nobody knows them. Nobody supports them. So we need to take the challenge of bringing to the light the solutions that people have in order to go from the lab, from the startup, to the market, to the consumer. This is the advantage of all of us. And it's hope. You know, we cannot continue to just think that the planet is in danger and do nothing. It's not enough to speak about the problem. People know about the problem. We're depressed by the problems. People have no hope if the problem is too big. But imagine that we can bring, with all these solutions, with a coherent and relevant energy policy, we can bring back hope. This will bring people together. This will bring countries from the European community closer to each other. This is what will make people more optimistic to jump into the future. And optimism brings growth. Optimism brings action. Optimism reduces all the costs that we have in social health, in psychiatric treatment, in riots, in rebellions, in political problems. So we see how everything is linked to energy. And this is why it's such an interesting topic, and this is why we are so happy to be able to bring and raise this issue with you and finish in an hour and a half with the feeling that there are a lot of solutions and that we can go for them and implement them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bertrand, for making us dream at this time in the day and for reminding us that there are lots of inefficiencies in our energy systems that we need to overcome to come to a more efficient and fairer system than in the past. We have here some quick questions, and maybe you would like to answer the first question. Which advice would you give to Portugal or to Portuguese officers to help boosting solar energy in Portugal? Do you want to comment?
There are two things. One is the energy production, the other thing is the energy efficiency. So solar energy, of course I love it because the sun carried me around the world with no fuel in my solar airplane. But it's not the only solution. You need to link solar and wind energy with hydroelectricity, with biomass, with geothermia. This is also important. And you have to link it to a usage of energy that is efficient. So if you waste the energy you produce with solar power, there will never be enough. So act with two legs. One leg is the clean production, the other leg is the energy efficiency, to save energy. Now, if you go back specifically to solar energy, of course, you have to allow people to do it and you have to push the solutions so everyone can produce his own solar power. Yesterday at dinner, there was one startup from Portugal who invented a system that can directly allow to link the solar panel to the grid. It costs 250 euros, and the system, you just buy it from the internet, you plug your solar cell in your wall socket, and you can bring the energy on the grid. Now, of course, you need to accompany this with a legal framework to encourage it. You need to allow people to sell their energy on the grid, not just to produce it. So if you have a legal framework that really encourages the use of these renewable energies, you will have a lot of people going for that. If you don't have the legal framework, it will remain an anecdote, just a startup selling great products. So I believe that innovators are really important, and Carlos Moedas knows that more than others. But innovators will not be enough if we don't have the legal framework. The government has the responsibility to encourage all this innovation to go on the market.
Sell, but even to exchange, to share energy and energy resources with the neighbors,
Absolutely.
The friends, the relatives. There is another question about the transport sector, and of course, your airplane is one of the most iconic figures that we can imagine. But what about the electric bikes? I know Switzerland has one of the highest penetration rates of electric bikes. How do you see the development of electric and solar, if possible, cars or bikes in Europe?
You need to be cleaner everywhere. And then the consumer will decide what he uses. So if you push more on bikes than cars, what do? You create resistance. Because some people want to have their car, and they will fight against it. So you always need to create win-win, and the politicians have to give the target, but they should not tell to the industry how to reach the target. Because the target might be reached with electro bikes, but also with electric cars, also in other ways, also maybe working at home instead of going to the office, where you also save a lot of transportation. So don't be too specific. Don't oblige people to make a sacrifice. Personally, I like to drive my electric car. This is what I like to do. If people tell me you have to take a bike, I'm not going to be happy.
And let's move to the next question, please. Can we have the next question? Yes, thank you. Is the European Union Union providing the right solutions to this transition? Yes, no? What do you think? Don't be feel... Oh. It's moving fast. Opinions are changing very fast nowadays. Well, I think it's tight. No? The yes and no, it's about 30 to 40%. So we are split on those who believe that the union is already doing enough and those who believe the union is not yet doing enough. So Vice President, please tell us why the union is already doing a lot.
Actually, it's much better than I thought. So, no, and I'm glad that we came. I mean, in these compositions, because Bertrand is really a personality who can make people dream, believe that we have a good solutions, and of course, with Carlos, we are working on them. And I was listening to Bertrand. One very famous quote of Nelson Mandela came to my mind, that things are impossible until they are done. This is what we are now trying to do in the European Union. And I think one of the reasons for the Energy Union project was the fact that not only the citizens, the stakeholders, but also the politicians on the highest level felt that the way how we've been trying to combine energy and climate policy, how we've been trying to maintain at the same time competitive industry, on what we've been focusing the support for research and innovation, that it was not working properly. We've been listening more and more from energy and climate representatives that the system as we have it is untenable, it's unsustainable anymore, that we have very low wholesale prices across Europe, nobody wants to invest in the modernization of energy sector, and at the same time, I think we have universal perception in every single member state, and I know that the Portugal is included in that the end user prices are too high. Then there was the question, how we are with our climate policies affecting our competitiveness? Why are we so much dependent on the imports of energy from abroad? Why we are paying more than 1 billion euros a day for imported energy? Cannot we somehow find a better, holistic, more comprehensive solution to really use the fact that Europe has the biggest economy on this planet, that we are the biggest market, that we have strong public opinion which supports fight against climate change, and really develop the holistic, comprehensive strategy to push us ahead of our global competitors in this energy transition. On top of it, I would say, and I think Bertrand already hinted at it very eloquently, that we are doing all this change in a time of accelerated industrial revolution, which brings a lot of challenges, but at the same time enormous opportunities. And therefore, we try to combine all these new elements, all that political support, all that strong public opinion that we need to simply have cleaner environments in Europe, and we need to do more for fighting the climate change. And we came up with the idea of Energy Union. What it is, it's the way how we are trying to tackle several issues at the same time. We are progressing in several dimensions. First, for Central and Eastern European countries, but also I believe for Portugal, what is important is energy security. You simply want to be sure that your citizens, your industry would have energy when you need it. That you cannot be pushed into the corner. You cannot be forced into the disadvantageous contract because you are dependent on one supplier. You want to be sure that you will get the energy when you need it. At the same time, we realized that Europe was paradoxically built on a steel and coal community. So the energy was at the birth of the European Union. But until today, despite the fact that we have the free movement of person, goods, and capital, we do not have free flow of energies across Europe because we lack hardware and we lack software. I think about hardware. you know a lot in Portugal, because in every single meeting I had, you've been raising, and rightly so, the issue of the lack of interconnections with your neighbors, with Spain, and of course with France, and lack of interconnection with the rest of Europe. And that's not only your problem. We have the lack of interconnections across the Europe, and we need to improve it if we really want to profit from the fact that we are the biggest economy in the world, and we should be much better interconnected than we are today. And then, of course, as Bertrand said, for innovators to innovate, for startup guys to bring the new technologies, we also need to keep up with the legislative framework. We cannot simply have obsolete framework which is preventing us from using new technologies. We cannot have the legislative rules which are forbidding the people to produce their own energy. We cannot have the rules which are protecting incumbent and preventing the private citizens to save a little bit on the energy bill and to save the environment at the same time. We have to modernize. We have to update our legislative framework. And this is what we've been doing with a series of legislative packages, and I hope I will not sound too ambitious, but the fact what we are trying to achieve with our latest proposal is the deepest transformation of our energy systems since they've been built in Europe 150 years ago and based on fossil fuels. We are trying to decentralize. We are trying to digitize. We are trying to decarbonize. We are trying to democratize how we produce the energy. And we are trying to really bring this new power of data, of optimization at the service of industry, at the service of the European citizens. And we believe that through this approach, we will also have much better tools to achieve our climate goals. I was very proud to sign in New York the agreement from Paris on tackling the climate change. I was very proud that Europe was the actor which was the most important diplomatic muscle behind the Paris Agreement. I can tell you that without European efforts, we wouldn't have Paris Agreement. Not only because of the excellent French presidency, but because of the collective push of the European institutions, European member states, are crisscrossing the globe to push for that agreement. So the Paris Agreement, until great extent, on the table, ratified and improved thanks to the European efforts. And of course, we have to continue to lead by example, and therefore, in all our energy policies, you would find that all our ambitious climate agenda is very much reflected in. And it's quite clear that if you want to achieve it, we have to go, as Bertrand said, beyond energy proper. We need to improve the transport sector. We need to use the new technologies for heating and cooling. We can do much more with energy efficiency in every single member state. We have 75% of our buildings which are energy inefficient. And with today's technology, we can really save an enormous amount of money. Yesterday over the dinner, I was telling the story from Paris where, thanks to the European Commission and EIB financing, there is currently going on the refurbishment of 40,000 households. Every single household, thanks to this operation, saves 1,200 euros per year. These are social housing. This is a lot of money, and I'm absolutely sure that we could do the same in Portugal, we can do the same in my country, in Slovakia, and we can do the same across Europe. And the last thing I would mention, which brings me to the excellent work Moedas is doing in the field of research and innovation. We know that we have a lot of opportunities with today's technology. But if we really want to be carbon neutral as of 2050, and this is the commitment we all signed up when we've been putting our signature under the Paris Agreement, we need new technologies. We need new startups. We need innovations. Some of the fantastic things we have seen in Oporto, in EFASEC, in ESC, in Vienna, and also with some of them we will see this afternoon here in Lisbon. So what you see in the European labs is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And we've been just brainstorming yesterday that if half of it would be announced by Elon Musk, it would be immediate super story breaking news on the CNN. So let's learn a little bit how we can sell all these innovations we have in Europe, and I'm sure that Carlos will help us, because as it was already said by George, he's sitting on the big cushion of money. I'm very glad that he's a good friend and colleague, so he allocated part of that money for key priorities of the energy union. So therefore, I'm, very, very, good friend of him, because he's not only a nice person, but he's helping us to achieve the change. And I think this is exactly what we have to do, to reprioritize, not to be afraid of this change, because I believe that this energy transition is a huge opportunity for Portugal. It's a huge opportunity for your industry. You are pioneering in many spheres, and it will bring you the jobs of the future. So, George, if I can kind of step in your moderating role, if you allow me, I would pass the floor to my colleague, to Carlos, because we are working together on many things, but I don't think that anyone can speak better about research and innovation in Europe than Carlos. So, Carlos, you have
the... Good morning. Thank you so much. It's a really great pleasure to be here in my country. Bom dia a todos. And I feel a bit awkward of speaking English, but I want really to tell a couple of stories. And I wanted to start that I think one of the things that I like about energy and research and innovation is that energy is really a great story about the changes that we are living today in terms of innovation and science. And I normally start my public speaking most of the time talking about Bertrand and stories about Bertrand, because he's really an inspiring man. Of this point that he was mentioning about the impossibility. And he's very kind, because he always let me tell this story, and so he kind of tells just part of the story. And he started by saying that when he tried to go around the world, and he said, look, I'm going to go around the world without fossil fuels. I'm going to get just a solar plane. And everybody, he told me then that he went to all the aircraft manufacturers, and all they said, it's impossible. What you're going to do is going to be too heavy and too big, and you're not going to make it around the world with your plane, just with solar. And then he didn't know what to do, and he went to a friend that was a boat builder. And the boat builder did it. And I asked Bertrand, why was it? And he said, because the boat builder didn't know it was impossible. And I think this is one of the great lines that I got, and so I thank you, Bertrand, because you get me to break the ice in my public speaking about energy. But one of the interesting things about what we're doing in energy is to look at what energy has been changing in terms of energy and in terms of innovation in science in Europe. And I think that one of the points that I really cherish about the example of energy is that you are the example of how innovation changed from the producer to the user. Schumpeter used to say that innovation was about the producer to invent something new and push that to the user and to the citizen. And that was true in that time. We're not in a digital world. But in a digital world is exactly the contrary. It's the citizen that is feeding the producer with the innovation. And the example of energy is just amazing on that. Because when you look at the things that you're seeing today, is basically the user taking charge, the citizen taking charge. And when last year the MIT chose the 50 best companies of the world in terms of startup, they got this German company called Sonnen. And Sonnen is a little bit what Elon Musk is doing, but better. And so instead of having just the Powerwall, which is something that we know how to do in Europe, but Elon Musk did it in the other side of the ocean, they basically share their knowledge in between the community to have best and produce energies for your friends and for your community and for your neighbors. And I think that these movement from the producer to the user is something that you see more in the energy sector than in other sectors. And you are an example of that change. And I want to get that as an example for other sides and other sectors of what's the role of energy. And so one of the things that we're putting money is exactly on that user innovation. And that's why, because that user innovation has two advantages. One is that basically is exactly what people need. And second, because it's at the intersections of disciplines. Because the users, they don't think about the disciplines. They don't think about if you're a specialist in energy, or if you come from other parts, or if you are a medical doctor, or if you are a physician, or you are a different person. You come into the intersections. And the second change that you see in innovation is that basically innovation is not anymore at the core of disciplines. And one of the things that we want to change going forward, and it comes from the inspiration of energy, is to have a program of innovation that does not have this kind of top-down approach where you tell people what to do. You know, today when you do these European programs, you tell people what they have to do in terms of innovation, but that doesn't work like that, because people, they don't want to be told what to do. And we have these programs where you say, like, let's invent the new battery. And so you get all the best people that work in lithium to get the new battery. But you know, the next battery will not come from any of those people, will come probably for someone else that never worked in batteries. And so what we want to do is to go the other way around and say, our programs are open. And so it's not about an energy program or transportation or other fields, it's about a program for good ideas. And we got to know people that used to come to our programs, and basically they had no success. They always failed. And so we met this woman from the Netherlands called Marjolein Helder that created a company called Plant E. And Plant E is a great idea of producing energy out of a plant. And so she came 5 times to Horizon 2020, and she always refused. People would not give her any financing. Why? Because people would say, oh, no, no. So you want to do energy out of plants? Oh, that must be agriculture. So let's send you to a program of agriculture. Oh, no, but it's energy. So it's probably you go for our line on energy. And she basically was going back and forth for 5 times. And so we asked her to help us to build a program that would be the other way around, that you would have these people like Marjolein Helder, this young and brilliant Dutch woman that is producing energy out of plants, to basically help us changing the program. And we created this idea of the European Innovation Council, which is exactly about that. And you know what? Was based in stories about people that are doing the difference in energy. And I think that it's another great example of your contribution to me. And so today I'm not telling what I'm actually contributing to you, but I'm telling you what you have contributed as energy people, as energy specialists to me. And the third point that I think is very important about the way I see energy innovation in science is that energy science and innovation is a great example of how important public money is in terms of science. And you know, a lot of us, we talk about how important it is to get the private money, and that's important, but what's the importance of the public money? And you know, there's a great economist called Mariana Mazzucato that normally she says that for a long time we thought that basically you would just put public money when you want to fix a market failure. And if you do that, you're actually not doing your job. Because if you just fix the market failure, you can go exactly on a direction that you won't want to go. And that in energy will be very easy. If you fix the market failure, if people don't have electricity, you could just have coal and still investing in fossil fuels, but that's not what you want. And so public money is important to set direction. And so one of the things that we have done this year with Vice President Šefčovič was to think about thoroughly what is the direction that we want to set for the future. We don't want to pick winners or tell people like you are the best and you are the best company, so I'll invest on you or I will get these kind of technology. But we have to give to the private sector the direction for the future. And so we decided that we would give 4 directions and we would put 2 billion euros. The first would be on renewables, and that is something that you know that we cherish that very much and we think that we are the future. By the way, I always remember my first time in the US in a ministerial 2 years ago that Maroš was not there on that first date, but our colleague Ernest Muniz, Portuguese, the Secretary of Energy in the US, that was from a family of Portuguese people in Azores. And I got in the room and he said, you know, these men, Carlos comes from a country that was for 4 days on renewable energy, and that's something unique in the world. And I think that's getting into a room, being Portuguese, and having that as the welcoming words from the Secretary of Energy of the US was kind of a very feel-good, and I think that we should feel good in our country about the direction. And so renewables is definitely one of our directions. The second one is storage, and on storage we're talking not just about batteries, but in a broader way of what can we do and invest in terms of storage for the future. We have a young lady from the European Research Council that is creating the first batteries out of graphene. Graphene is this material that was basically discovered by one of our grantees, Professor Andrea Geim, that one day was just sharpening his pencil, and he thought, just one layer of carbon, this would be really something fantastic. And he basically get to this material that is just one layer of carbon atoms and is 200 times tougher than steel, is more flexible than steel, and now he was working in terms of batteries with that material. And so this woman just got an ERC grant from us to develop the new batteries out of graphene. Then the third example, or the third direction, goes into what Maroš was just referring, which is about the efficiency in buildings. And that's something that in Europe, we have millions of square meters of inefficient buildings, and so we want to put money on that. And so on that, I think that, in terms of the buildings, being myself a civil engineer, I know that there's so much that we could have done in the past, but we didn't. So now I think it's time really to invest and to put money. And the fourth direction that I want to tell you and put money into is e-mobility, and the future of cars, and the future of mobility, and how we're going to have a cleaner environment in terms of our mobility. And that will be 2 billion euros for the next 3 years. And so we're not picking any kind of winner. We're not telling people what to do, but we're telling the private sector, the companies, and the people, look, these are the 4 directions, the journey that we'll have in terms of the European Commission. And so that will be a little bit what I wanted to tell you, that you are not just a field or a sector where I kind of put money. You are an inspiration for our strategy that, as you know, we called open innovation, open science, and openness to the world. And energy is an example of that, an example that today, whatever you do, you cannot solve it in your own country. So the old paradigm of rigid borders and physical borders of countries doesn't really work, right? Because I think that in Portugal, we know that it doesn't work. And in terms of energy, we know how we suffer in terms of being isolated from other parts of Europe with the interconnections, how important it is to work together. So thank you very much for being here with 2 very good friends, and that was just to put the conversation on.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thank you to all the speakers and to those who have already asked questions. Before we go to those questions and to the other questions that you may wish to put to our panel, I would like just to take what you said about buildings and the importance of buildings. We all know that we need to renovate buildings. You see lots of renovation in Portugal nowadays because of the tourism, which is a different type of incentive to renovate buildings. We were not used to that, but nowadays it is a boom, and it's fine. I mean, it's fine. But there are cases where it cannot work like that, and where we need maybe a different approach. And I wanted just to launch here a suggestion. We had, as you may know, some weeks ago, an awful fire north of Lisbon, where several people lost their houses. I believe it is our duty as a community to contribute to the possibility of giving those people who lost their houses under these circumstances, as soon as possible, new housing. But shouldn't we, instead of just rebuilding what was there in the old way, provide them with state-of-the-art, efficient houses, so that in the future they will have a lower energy bill, they will have a better air quality, they will have more comfort? I think they deserve that, and it's something that we can afford as taxpayers and maybe also as European Commission deep pockets, just small amount of money to make a difference and to show that together we can make the impossible becoming possible. And suddenly, small village lost somewhere gets state-of-the-art technology, and people there get a better quality of life. So maybe that's something that you could think about, because it's not only about tourism and making lots of money. Sometimes it's also about showing people that we are there when they need our support and our help. And we is everybody, is the local community, but also the European institutions. Moving to another sector, which was mentioned in one of the questions, the transport sector. There was a question here about when we will have no fossil fuel cars. We know that some countries like Norway and France have already announced it, deadlines for abolishing the traditional cars. Does the European Union think about that? What are your plans in terms of targets for the transport sector?
The transport sector is very important, and I think that we cannot achieve our climate goals without really ambitious proposals for the transport sector. Therefore, this summer, a few weeks ago, which is adopted the new package of proposals, which is called Clean, Connected and Competitive Mobility. We started with the first package, which was very much aimed at social aspects of the truck drivers, but also on how we should organize the traffic in the future. What should we do with the toll systems? How we should implement better the polluter pays and user pays principle, where again I think Portugal in many aspects was the inspirations for the proposals we put on the table. But we will now work very hard for second and third sub-parts of this package, and it's quite clear that we need to propose new emission targets for the personal vehicles and vans. This is what we want to do before the end of the year. And for the first time in the history of the EU, we will also propose the new emission targets for trucks, buses and coaches yearly next year. Why this is important? Because one thing is that we never received so many complaints about air pollution like this winter. Simply the winter was harsh, and in some of our cities for a few days we had even worse conditions than in China and India. And you see how the mayors are getting mobilized, and I expect that very short, within few years, there will be a first mayor who would say, okay, if you want to come in the center of my city, you can do it only with a zero-emission car, because simply we do not want to have the air pollution in my city. And once we would improve the technology for autonomous driving, I believe that it would be the second condition for driving around the cities, because of course, the traffic could be better organized. The computer would respect 50 kilometers per hour limit. Computer will stop at pedestrian crossing, and computer would park where it's supposed to park. This is all things which mayors and traffic police love. What we are going to do in this respect? First, we have very intensive discussion with the car industry, and I'm trying to make it very vivid for them that in such an important industry as a car industry for Europe, which is major investor into research and innovation, we cannot afford any risk or some kind of Kodak moment. That suddenly, one day, we would realize that the industry upon which we've been so proud that we are producing best cars in the world, simply there will be no demand for them. And the danger is here, because if you look which is the biggest producer of the electric vehicles of today, it's not Tesla, it's not the American company, it's Chinese company BYD. And when I was in Beijing, I already saw many of these cars on the streets, and they looked quite okay. When we would not jump on this train right now, I'm very afraid that very strong position of the global leader in the automotive industry would be in danger, and therefore I think we have to progress on two tracks. First one, we have to come up with intelligent, technologically feasible but ambitious new targets for our industry. How we are going to innovate? What should be the best solution for the future? How we are going to promote zero-emission cars? And we need to improve our infrastructure. And I believe that this would be huge EU value added if we manage to accelerate the build-up of the infrastructure for alternative fuels, for electricity, for hydrogen. It might be CNG or LNG for the shipping, but we need to roll out the infrastructure so the zero-emission cars would be more appealing. The people would lose that fear about the range, which very often is exaggerated because usually we use the cars per day for, I don't know, between 10 to 20 kilometers. So already today's ranges are quite sufficient. But I understand that it's a psychological element that people want to have that autonomy, that freedom of circulation. And therefore, we need to help in that direction. It's very important to go in that direction because of air pollution. It's very important because of the fact that quarter of the greenhouse gas emission in Europe comes from the car sector, and I believe that with today's technologies we have to achieve it. We just have to motivate the industry, give the good conditions to the consumers, and create the necessary infrastructure for that.
Thank you very much. We have talked about innovation, about visions, about buildings, transport. Now let's talk about what else you want to discuss. Oh, please raise your hand and identify yourself and put the question.
O Carlos Fernandes from the municipality of Sintra. How are you? I think Bertrand is all right with these questions. What happens in the legal framework? What is happened in the legal framework to stimulate the transition for another economy, for another society? What happened in the box of political box? This is the question.
Very clear. Thank you very much. Bertrand, you want to answer?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think the governments should give the target to reach very clearly based on the solutions that exist. Because today it's not the case. Today the targets are set by political negotiations between the different parties. So imagine that you can have this catalog of 1,000 solutions that exist today that are profitable to protect the environment. Then the targets can be much more ambitious. You can say, for example, that the average energy that a car is allowed to use would be the equivalent of 1 liter of gasoline per 100 kilometers. The equivalent. So it can be electric, it can be hybrid, it can be a turbo, it can be biofuel, but you have an ambitious target. And then all the solutions will come on the market. For the production of energy, you can put the target of how much CO2 the energy that is produced in the country has to be leveled to. And we will see very quickly that if you do that, the coal power plants will disappear, and they will be replaced by solar or wind, together with some help from gas. And you will have the support from the oil companies to switch from coal to gas, because it is profitable. But as long as the legal framework does not exist, people will not do it. I was talking with the Minister of Energy of Sweden. He told me that they have a carbon tax, 145 euros per ton of carbon, of CO2. And I told him, but how did the industry accept it? And he said, the industry is happy because it obliges them to be more competitive. And today the Swedish companies in the industry are more competitive because CO2 is not only an indicator of pollution, it's a marker of inefficiency, of loss of energy, of loss of money. So there are very clear things that the governments can do. And today they can do it. They can do it because solutions exist and the solutions are profitable. But they have to know that they can do it. And this is our role. This is our role. My role with the Solar Impulse Foundation, the role of the European Commission, it's to speak to governments, to speak to the media, to speak to key opinion leaders, and say, do it because it's possible.
Thank you very much. Next question, please. There was a question there? No? Well, don't be shy. Take this opportunity. Maybe we can talk about something that is related and Bertrand was already addressing, which is the second question here about the closing of coal-fired power plants. How do you see it in the European Union? We know that this is a very hot topic.
It is, and I think I wouldn't say that it's such a hot topic from mostly the energy security issue. I think it has a lot to do with the traditions, with the jobs, with the people working in the traditional coal mining regions, and it has very strong social aspect into it. And therefore, we again have to look for the more comprehensive solutions, because if we just come and say, okay, this mine will be closed and you all people lose your jobs and we don't see any perspective for your city, for the region, of course you would have a huge opposition to that. And of course these people would feel they've been treated unfairly, because they've been working very often for generations in very difficult conditions, and they've been doing very hard job. Therefore we came up now with a initiative, and it's part of that package of November, where we are starting the program how to help these carbon-intensive regions with the fair transition, how to help them to develop new business plans, how to show to these regions, to these cities that they would have a new economic future. And we have again, thanks to the European variety, very good examples how it was done in Germany, in France, in Belgium, and we are now working with the countries like Poland, Czech Republic, Spain, Slovakia, and others, where we are talking to these regions and proposing them what could be new, how this can be done. I presented this initiative for the first time, and I did it deliberately in Katowice, in Silesia, because this is one of the most important mining region in Europe. And of course, anything to do with coal is perceived extremely sensitively in Poland, because you have really hundreds of thousands of people working in this sector. So when I was presenting the initiative to the regional parliaments, because 2 regions been present, I was a little bit, tensed and worried what would be the reaction, what these people would tell me. And I have to say that I was really touched by the answer of the Marshal, of the speaker of this regional assembly, because he told me something which I really didn't expect from that region. He told me, please work with us, help us, provide us with the expertise, because I feel that we need to do something about this. And I asked him, why you feel so strongly about this, Marshal? Because young people are leaving my city. They are leaving my regions. They are worried that their kids would be sick, that they would have respiratory diseases, that they will not find the good jobs in the region. I don't want to have depopulated city. I don't want to have depopulated region, because I'm proud of my region. I'm proud of what we have been doing here. So we need a new future. We need a new business model, and we would be ready to work with you to achieve that. And there is a lot of things what we can do to find the new business models, to help to develop new skills, to bring different financing tools, to use structural funds a little bit more smartly, and really to offer new future to these regions. So very often I have to say you feel these discrepancies when you talk to the federal or central government and to the regions. And I think now what is very important also for us is to talk to all the actors and look for the solution. So I believe that future is very clear with the clean energy, and with this rapid falling down of the prices of renewable energy. It would be not only, I would say, the political necessity, but it would be more and more economic imperative.
Thank you very much for reminding us that the energy transition is not only about energy and CO2 contents, but it's also about the jobs, the investments, and reshaping the way we manage the natural resources, and energy is one of them, but not the only one. We have to think about materials, we have to think about water, we have to think about the interconnections between all these natural resources. And this leads us to a different way of producing and consuming and sharing goods and resources. And this is a very important thing at the local level. That's why the mayors, the municipalities play such an important role in this process. So can you allow me just sure.
One more example where this approach was used to transforming the region, which was before that coal-intensive Hauts-de-France in France. And that was the project which was very much invented, and it's promoted by another famous professor, Jeremy Rifkin. And he sees the buildings as a potential poles of change, of transformation. So he had an agreement with the regional government that they've been working with, I think, altogether 200 bigger buildings, very often owned by local authorities, and they are transforming it in the way that these buildings are actually storing the energy. That the public spaces and parking spaces are equipped with e-charging stations for the cars. That these buildings are transmitting, disseminating Wi-Fi signal. So suddenly from the region, which was very traditional, energy intensive, you have a totally new environment of the buildings which are producing the energy, Wi-Fi everywhere, and infrastructure for the new modern car fleet, and you really create a new innovative atmosphere in this region, which brings the young people, innovators, startup community, and this is something what we can do everywhere in Europe. Just with the transformation of few buildings, you can change this microclimate in the concrete place, and on top of it, create a lot of local jobs.
We have 2 questions. I will ask you, or 3, no, 4, 5 now. Well, so 1 minute each, please. Professor Senat Paiva, the first. We will collect the 5 questions, and then we will get the answers, okay? So please be brief.
She tells me to stand up.
And be brief, please.
Senat Paiva, it's going to be very short. It's a proper question. When is the European Union really build a proper transmission power network so that we can freely export and import renewable energy throughout the Union? And connected to this question, what do you think of the proposed link between Portugal and Morocco?
Thank you very much. Second question there in the back, please.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to congratulate the panel, and especially Professor Piccard, because you are such an inspiration. We are here in Bethlehem, in Belém, in Lisbon, where 5 centuries ago the discoveries start, and you are one of the discoveries of the new century. And my question is directly related with air transportation, because we all know that the air transportation, airplanes, are one of the most polluting CO2 emissions. So I think you all came to Lisbon by airplane, and Solar Impulse just take one, right? You cannot take the rest of you. So my question is, what plans are in the European Union to shift from air transportation to other less pollutant means of transportation, such as railways? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have 2 more questions here.
Hello, Julia Seixas from Universidade Nova de Lisboa. I do believe that innovation is in place, and it is always a question of time to become to a market. The point from a climate change perspective is to speed up the process. A key issue is carbon price, and the EU ETS is not delivering what we could expect and we would expect from it, because now it should cost around 25 or 30 euros. My question is the EU thinking on a carbon pricing policy over the EU, what is happening over the EU ETS?
Thank you very much. And the chairman of the Portuguese Energy Association, please.
Hi. Sorry. João Crispim with Homing, a sustainable energy, sustainable housing company. My question is, there's a lot of talk about the creation of a peer-to-peer network or selling energy in a peer-to-peer fashion. how is this compatible with the need for balancing the system? And what is the energy union thinking about this?
Thank you very much, George. The question and my subject was already addressed just before me, but the point is exactly this one. If we can change the carbon price in a very short-term period, we will reduce immensely the emissions. And the reason to that is that today, as you know, we have a lot of CCGTs both in Portugal and in Spain, and utilization is around 1,000 hours a year, 2,000 hours a year, when the coal power stations are working 6,000 hours and things like that. So if we can invert the merit order, we will save a lot of emissions in a very short period of time. So I cannot understand why we don't fix, as the Sweden example, a minimum floor for the carbon price. And that will change in the short term a lot of things. The other, if you allow me, just another thing. When you see the energy outlook from BP and from the International Agency of Energy, we see that anyhow, the use of oil will continue at the previous level for a very long period of time. So my question regarding these projections is, are we still optimistic regarding the solution under this type of projections? Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Then I will give last one. And while you take the micro, I will just make a remark to my dear friend George, because the issue of the floor, the carbon floor, is a national decision. In fact, it can be done. And in Portugal, this possibility is in the law already since end of 2014. As you know, when there was a commission for the green tax reform in Portugal, we introduced that possibility. It's just a matter of defining the figure if any government wants to do that. So the legal possibility is already there.
Nowadays, I will close my power station of Sines, and its output will be replaced by a power station
of gas
in Spain. So there is no solution that will go there. Okay? If we have to do it, we have to do it for the entire region. Otherwise, we won't have any result.
A plea for harmonization. Last question, please, in the back.
My name is Mauro from Ischete Business School. My question is is a little bit related to the Morocco unification of electric market. Is if European Union is thinking about a unification of the electric market that could increase much more the efficiency and the capability use of our production plants.
Thank you very much. Bertrand, would you like to comment on any of the questions? And then we will move to Carlos and to Maroš.
Very interesting questions. Well, I take the first one, of course, about airplanes. You know, airplanes represent 3% of the consumption of energy and the equivalent of 5% of CO2 effect because it's in higher altitude, so it acts more. So it's not the main problem. The main problem are the 95% on the ground, where most of it comes from badly insulated houses and combustion engines. But nevertheless, let's address the problem. And I make you the promise that in 9 years and 1 month, because since 11 months I'm saying that already, there will be electric airplanes flying 2-3 hour flights with 50 passengers on board. It will not necessarily be solar like Solar Impulse. Solar Impulse created its own electricity with the sun while flying, so we could fly forever. You don't need that for passengers. You need to load the batteries on the ground with the grid, and it can be solar panels on the airport. And the airplane can transport 50 passengers for short to medium haul, which will allow airplanes to land at night, closer to cities with no disturbance for the neighborhood. So big advantage. And now it's interesting because all the guys who were saying that I could never do it with Solar Impulse are now working on electric airplane programs, which is a good sign.
and it will come. That is for sure. Now, one way to push this quicker, of course, is the price of carbon. I think, Maroš, Carlos, you can explain the European policy on that. But it's very clear that carbon pricing is important, but it will not happen before everybody knows that the neighbor will do it also. Because everybody is afraid of doing it himself as a pioneer, which actually is wrong, because the countries who have done it alone show that it's an increase of productivity for their industry. But nevertheless, what we have to explain is that the fossil energies have hidden costs and the renewable energies have hidden gains. And this we have to remember for each decision. When you use fossil energy, you believe that it is cheap because you do not count the greenhouse effect, the climate change, the pollution, all these things, and the wars to obtain fossil energy. If you go on renewables, you believe it is expensive, but it's not anymore, because you already gain the billions of euros that are attributed to treating chronic bronchitis, asthma, and lung cancer due to the use of fossil energy. So what you will gain on one side will of course compensate the other side. And we have to see that today, if you count everything, renewables are much more profitable. But we have to give it a push, and the price on carbon is something we absolutely have to do as quick as possible. I just finished by giving an anecdote. When I was 7 years old, I was spending my holidays in a little mountain village in Switzerland, very nice village. And twice a week, all the inhabitants of the village were taking their waste, all the garbage. They were going with their car in the forest and dropping all the waste in the little valley where there was a very nice river. And all this garbage was burning. It was stinking like hell. It was just disgusting. But it was completely allowed. It was legal. Why don't we do the same right now? Only because it's prohibited. Otherwise, people would continue to do it. So there was a legal framework saying you're not allowed to dump your waste in the forest. You have to collect the waste and recycle them. And now what's the result? Protection of the environment, of course, but mainly a new industry, the industry of collecting the waste, of recycling the waste. Jobs created, a lot of money being gained, and thanks to the legal framework. So when we say, oh, the governments, they should not interfere too much, they have to leave freedom, not for everything. We need legal frameworks for health, for taxes, for police, for security, for hygiene, for education, for everything. And we need also to put the same legal framework for energy and for the CO2 that we put in the atmosphere.
Thank you very much. I'll keep the tough questions for the Vice President, for the question of hierarchy. But I wanted to comment on a couple of points that were raised here. The first is, it's very interesting to see that one of these years really great things we did with President Juncker was about this idea of the white paper. And by being in this session, I understand more the importance of that white paper. Is that there's a lot of things that you think that we can do, but we can't. They are national responsibilities. And that creates a confusion in Europe that disconnects the citizens with us. Because the citizens think that we as European Commission, we as European Union, we can touch a button and change a lot of things that we cannot do. And a lot of the questions, and I'll let the Vice President go more into the detail, are questions that we, European Commission, cannot really have an effect, or we cannot decide, is a decision of the countries. And then it's up to the citizens, and it's up to the nations to decide if you want us to give us more power to decide on those questions, or you want the countries to have that power. But we have to have a clear distinction, and people have to understand what's our job and what's the job of the countries. And I think that it happens to me when I talk about energy, when I talk about health, when we talk of the different sectors in Europe, that we don't have this fine line. This line is not clear on the minds of most of the people, and it's normal that it's not, because we have to explain it better. And that comes to my second point, that also goes to the question of the air transportation. I've been discussing a lot with Bertrand this point of how can we create missions that get us connected with the citizens. And today, I mean, we had this very good idea of setting direction, of looking into the directions that we want to set. But then if I go on the street and I say to people, no, we're going to put 2 billion on e-mobility, on renewables, on construction, and people say to me, yes, nice, it's very nice what you're doing, but that doesn't change anything on my life. And so we've been working with Bertrand, and we talked about how can we create missions that reconnect people to science. And I think that one of the ideas when we talked about that with Bertrand, and now it's just like a private conversation, but I want to share with you. And I said, we have to do more on batteries, but people don't understand. I mean, it's like something that is quite vague. And Bertrand said, why don't you put a mission that is that Europe will be the first to have a fully electrical plane? And then people will connect. And one of the things that we're working very hard, and I would like to ask you for your suggestions, is in getting these missions that people connect with us. And those missions have to be in the question of energy or health, simple things that people say, I'm proud of being European. Europe was the first to do it. You know, I'm always very upset with the story that happened a couple of months ago when NASA came and said that they discovered 7 new planets. And it was not NASA, it was the European Union, was a scientist from Liège, was someone that we know very well, but they communicated first. They connect to people in a way that we don't. So I think that on the field of air transportation, where, you know, we have the biggest private public partnership called Clean Sky. It's basically 4 billion euros. You're talking about 24 countries, 600 projects, but no one knows about it. No one knows about it. And no one knows about it because the way we sell it is that we're working on increasing the efficiency of planes. But how? How does it connect with people? And so one of the things that keeps me awake at night is how can we use science, and specifically in these sectors, to reconnect with citizens in general. And so I think that it's a very good point you raised, and I think we have to find a couple of missions in the energy sector. And then I think Pascal said there's a lot of hidden costs on the fossil fuels, and I think there's also a lot of hidden subsidies. And I think that's one of the things that we discussed a lot with Maroš, is how do you shift from a paradigm where you have loads of subsidies for fossil fuels, basically the number goes like around 500 billion 1 year ago, to investment in renewables that is a little fraction of that. You're talking about a couple of billions a year worldwide. So if we could shift from those 500 billion of subsidies that nobody sees because they are hidden into the fossil fuels, if you could shift it to the other side, then you would have much more research, much more technology and application of those technologies. And so that will be just my grain of salt for the questions that were raised, and some were very technical for the Vice President of Energy, which I'm not, so I'll go.
As you see, Carlos is a good friend, you know. No, but we are helping each other because not everyone knows the answer to everything. But I will try to be very telegraphic because I've been extremely patient and excellent audience with lots of great questions. The first about the modern transmission network. That was the discussion we had yesterday also in ESC, and my question was if we need some kind of standardization, harmonization of what smart grid actually means. And I think conclusion of the yesterday discussion was that it would be too much of a limiting of the possibilities which the new technologies are bringing us. That we would need something else for Portugal and Spain, something different for Finland and Sweden, something else for the Baltic states. So we just have to know that what we need to build is a modern transmission grid which would allow us to be flexible, which would work with data, which would help us to optimize the flows of the energies, and which would accommodate all that consumer drive which we feel in many of the EU member states. So it's quite clear that we need to digitize our transmission systems. And when we would like to have it ready, or as modern as possible, all that proposals I was describing, which we've been putting under the umbrella of the Energy Union, are aimed at creating completely new landscape for energy production, transmission and consumption as of 2020. Therefore, we are rushing so much. Therefore, we want to get all these proposals approved between now and the end of our mandate in the European Commission and in the European Parliament in 2019. And therefore, I can promise you we do our utmost to make sure that we would have this 10% interconnection rate achieved by 2020, and therefore why we believe that 15% by 2030 is a bare minimum. Because we are asking here also on the screen when EU would be 100% renewable. In some instances we already have been, as the Carlos pointed out, with our 27% goal for 2030, which I personally believe we would exceed, because I see this technological advancement, which is very impressive already today. Even with that goal, we would be well over 50% of the renewables. So I think that it could be actually much closer than we think, because if you look at how the technological development is going, we are, I think, at this hockey type of a curve, that it was gradual and now it's getting very, very steep, and I think that the transformation will come very, very fast. And I said it several times, and I honestly believe in it, that the Energy Union doesn't stop at the European or European Union borders. I see how Western Balkans countries want to be part of our energy community. Ukraine, Moldova, Turkey, but also Northern African countries, and therefore if there is such a good prospect for the cooperation of Morocco, I think it's a very interesting project. There is a lot of possibilities for export of our technologies, but at the same time for harnessing all the natural preconditions they have for wind and solar power. I know that Tunisia is interested to be linked up, that Egypt would like to be linked up. So I think all this is kind of spreading of the European approach, technologies, where we have first mover advantage, because the Europeans being those who invested the most, who know how to master this technology. And if we can use the European know-how to give this 600, 700 million Africans the access to the energy, because they do not have it right now and they would never get it through the current technologies. Let's use microgrids, let's use renewables, let's use our official assistance programs to help them to create a new economic reality on the ground through the European technologies. If it comes to the carbon price, one official observation, one personal. The official would be that we need to work on market-based mechanism, and we have to get all our EU member states on board, meaning that we have to make a proposal which would get at least qualified majority in the Council. It's quite difficult, it's challenging. Now we are, I believe, in the last stage of how we want to transform the emission trading scheme as of 2020. We definitely would respect the the decision of the heads of state and government and our commitment in Paris that by 2030 we should reduce greenhouse gas emissions through the ETS system by 43%, and we need to reduce the greenhouse gas emission from non-ETS sector like transport, like building, like agriculture by 30%. It's very ambitious. For some countries less, for some countries it's very, very ambitious. But at the same time, I also know a lot of examples like Bertrand referred to, or when I was in Norway and they've been showing me the offshore platform, and very proudly they showed me the green pipe. And they told me, look, this is the pipe which is pushing back under the seabed the CO2 which was stripped out of the gas which we extracted from the seabed. It's possible because we have additional carbon tax of 50 euros per ton. So it depends, I would say, also how technologically advanced the countries are, what the political leadership is proposing to the society, and how society is supporting these changes. And I believe that with the proposals we are making and with that huge amount of allowances we are going to remove from the market and put into the deep freezer, that we would end up, at least according to our calculation, with the carbon price around 30 euros per ton in the next decade. So I believe that this would also provide the good signals for more innovations and for the cleaner technologies, because Bertrand was very descriptive about what are the hidden costs of pollution. I would just say one number. Every single year, 400,000 people dies prematurely in Europe because of the air pollution. So that's one city gone every year because we cannot simply manage the air pollution better, despite the fact that we have already technology today we can use. And I think these are the figures we should really use more to convince decision makers, to convince business leaders to go for the cleaner and better solutions. And of course, the question about the plane, I think, again, Bertrand is a huge expert, but at the same time, I think we have to continue this global push. We are pushing it through ICAO. Again, I believe that without Paris, we would never arrive at the current agreement, which might seem not ambitious enough, but it seemed impossible just a year ago. And it was that as of 2020, the greenhouse gas emissions from the planes should peak out. So that would be the maximum, and that will put also the aviation industry under lots of pressure to innovate, to bring the fossil fumes down, and really to bring the new technologies into the space. So looking through my notes, I hope that I answer most of the questions which we proposed.
Thank you very much. I think that at this point in time, at least two facts are quite obvious. The first one is that my performance as a moderator was a disaster, because we are well over time. And the second fact is that you are extremely interested on the topics of energy and the energy union. And I am very grateful that you were patient and active in participating in this debate. Maybe there are some other points that we can, on which we can agree at this stage, and very briefly I will try to summarize them. I think that we all know that we are where we are today in 2017 in terms of our European leadership in this topic, thanks to the visionaries like Bertrand and other people who have made a lot of pressure upon our decision makers, both in policy and in industry, to look at things from a different perspective, and to look at an airplane as a possible ship, or to a ship as a possible airplane, is indeed the right way of doing that, and especially when you are close to the Tower of Belém. That's the right metaphor. But we also should acknowledge that the Juncker Commission, thanks to prioritizing energy, has provided an extremely important impulse to bring together the energy industry with the decarbonization dimension and with the more economic and social dimension. And for the first time, we have an integrated approach to these different perspectives, which have to be addressed jointly. And clearly the successes that we have reached in Paris and in other places, the leadership that we show in policymaking and in industry all over the world are the result of this improved, coordinated, multidisciplinary approach. And that's something that you can see when you read the proposals of the Commission presented last year, and I think that we should also acknowledge the effort of commissioners, but in particular the vice president in charge of that file, and of Commissioner Moedas, who through innovation is always putting pressure to get more innovative solutions and not the incumbent industry coming and influencing too much the legislative process. We have already now these proposals on the table. We know that the coming months will be very hard because there will be lots of attempts to influence these legislative proposals in one way or the other, not always necessarily in the way that we here in this room wish to see, which is a way of a more progressive way, fully exploiting the potential benefits for our economy and our society of the transition to the low-carbon energy systems. So we hope that you will keep the energy necessary to bring these proposals to the right conclusion for the benefit of our energy consumers and citizens. And of course, it's not only about legislation, it's also about the framework for incentives and for the right mechanisms that can be coordinated through state aid, through public procurement, through competition law, to help, as it was very well described here, to help putting the right direction to this transition. And we were talking also about subsidies, and fortunately the new information and communication technologies make everything much more transparent. So nowadays it's possible, you go to your mobile phone and you can see in real time, for instance, who is producing electricity with coal, and you can see who are the sinners. So it's not necessary to wait for the annual report of the company. You can get this information in real time, and so should also the public opinion through the NGOs and other organizations, and should the legislators intervene so that the national policies are in line with our common goals. Not always easy, and an easy task, as we know, but a necessary task. And I think that, as far as I could understand, the purpose of these dialogues, it's to bring closer the citizens of Europe with the European institutions. I think that you have been very successful in explaining what the EU has done, can do, cannot do, and you have been also very successful in expressing your views and your uncertainties and your wishes. But I believe that we have to be concrete, and that's why I mentioned before that case of the 50 or 60 houses that have to be rebuilt very soon for people who lost their houses. Do you want to be concrete? Can the European Union come to Portugal and say, yes, we are going to help you, providing you with state-of-the-art efficient houses? Can we make a difference, a concrete difference for concrete people who are suffering now, who are in a difficult situation, and building something that can be an example for other communities in Portugal and in other parts of the world? So that's my challenge to you, and I would like to now thank all of you for your patience, and to give the floor to the Vice President for concluding this session. Thank you very much.
I just really would like only to thank you very much for coming, for being such a engaging audience, and to tell you that it's always a pleasure to come to the country where you have no problem in pronouncing my name, because Josh is very well pronounced in Portuguese language. At the same time, it's very great pleasure to come to the country which is not only representing the champions of football in Europe, but also win the Eurovision Song Contest, And as I said yesterday, definitely belongs among the leaders, pioneers, the champions of innovation, of the commitment to the transition and looking to the future. So thank you very much for coming in this beautiful summer day to talk to us. I'm sure that all of us will very much appreciate it. All the remarks, all the input you provided us, we will bring back to Brussels, and we hope that we can accept the challenge and we will come back with the good answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.